A man spends his life believing that women want kindness, devotion, and endless proof of loyalty, and he cannot understand why his efforts are ignored, while another man, careless with words and unapologetic in his actions, holds her attention without even trying. This is the opening wound Machiavelli would expose, because the truth he taught was never about pleasing the masses or seeking affection, but about commanding loyalty by controlling the frame in which people move. Seduction, seen through his eyes, is not a performance of devotion but an arrangement of power, and in this arrangement the one who gives without leverage becomes invisible, while the one who sets terms becomes irresistible. Most men, blinded by stories of romance and selfless service, confuse sacrifice with strength, but Machiavelli warned that generosity without fear creates contempt, not gratitude. When a man places himself beneath her approval, when every word and every gesture is designed to be safe and acceptable, he is not loved more deeply. He is tolerated until someone more compelling arrives. This is why the so-called user, the man who does not bend, the man who allows her to serve his vision rather than chasing hers, captures her imagination. His power lies not in cruelty but in scarcity. His time is limited, his approval is earned, and his attention feels like a prize rather than a default. Think of the difference. One man sends a dozen messages, plans elaborate gestures, and waits by the phone. The other is already moving through his world, answering only when it suits him, never desperate, never pleading. The first believes effort equals desire, but the second understands Machiavelli's law. People admire what they cannot control, and they grow bored with what is always available. She will never confess it in polite company, but her emotions follow the second man. She explains his distance as arrogance. She criticizes his indifference, yet her thoughts linger on him while the man who sacrificed everything fades into silence. Machiavelli taught rulers that it was safer to be feared than loved if one could not be both, and this truth carries into the hidden theater of attraction. To use her, in this sense, is to place your mission, your standards and your boundaries above her immediate approval. It is not manipulation, it is the recognition that respect is the first currency of desire. Without respect, every gift, every kindness, every plea becomes worthless. With it, even a single gesture carries weight that she cannot ignore. This is where our journey begins, with the uncomfortable recognition that women, like all people, do not fall in love with what flatters them, but with what challenges them. And Machiavelli, if he walked among us, would remind every man that seduction is not a contest of who gives more, but a test of who holds the frame she cannot escape. A man imagines that if he only proves himself enough, if he shows her the depths of his effort, she will reward him with love. But Machiavelli would see this as the fatal mistake of those who confuse activity with influence. When rulers showered their people with endless favors, he noted, they were not remembered for generosity but despised for weakness, because what is given without limit is valued by no one. Seduction works under the same law. The man who performs, who constantly seeks to display his worth, teaches her that his value is cheap, while the man who withholds performance and offers himself sparingly teaches her that his presence is rare. Performance fails because it is transparent. A dozen compliments, daily gifts, and open declarations of loyalty do not reveal strength, they reveal hunger. Hunger is not attractive, because hunger admits dependence, and dependence admits that the other person holds power. Machiavelli advised that the wise ruler never shows dependence, for the moment you need another too much, you surrender the frame of power. In love, this is the man she stops desiring. the one who lays his cards on the table before the game has even begun, believing that honesty of feeling is enough to secure affection. Power attracts because it shifts the center of gravity. The man who uses her, in the Machiavellian sense, is not mistreating her. He is refusing to trade his time and energy cheaply. He allows her to invest, to work for his attention, to pursue him as much as he pursues her. To her mind, this is not unfairness, but proof of value, because what she must earn becomes valuable by the effort she expends. This is the paradox of desire. The more he performs for her, the less she feels for him, but the more he demands she step into his orbit, the more she attaches her emotions to his gravity. Imagine two men again. One stays awake at night drafting the perfect message, hoping not to say the wrong thing. The other replies when convenient, unhurried, confident, never explaining himself. The first man bleeds effort but inspires indifference. The second man bleeds nothing, and yet sparks obsession. Machiavelli would call this the proof of power. True influence comes not from how much you give, but from how much the other must risk to hold you. When performance ends, attraction begins. What she desires is not the certainty of a servant, but the challenge of a sovereign, and the man who understands this becomes unforgettable to her. There is a reason why the language of use feels so dangerous. Because in common speech it means exploitation. Yet Machiavelli understood that people always use one another. And the difference lies only in whether the exchange creates loyalty or breeds resentment. When a ruler gave land, favors, or protection, it was not charity. It was a calculated arrangement to bind others to his cause. In seduction, the man who uses her is not exploiting her body or her kindness, but allowing her to invest into him. And psychology reveals that what people invest in, they value more deeply than what is handed to them freely. Men who fear being accused of selfishness often strip themselves of value by refusing to let a woman give anything back. They carry all the weight of the relationship, believing that effort proves devotion, and in doing so they rob her of the chance to feel her own attachment grow. Machiavelli would call this blindness, because by protecting her from cost, they destroy her sense of value. A woman who invests time, effort, and even sacrifice into a man begins to tie her identity to him, not because of manipulation, but because the human mind is wired to defend the choices it has made. Think of it as a simple contrast. One man showers her with gifts and attention, requiring nothing in return. She enjoys the moment, but soon his presence feels optional, even disposable. Another man makes her prove herself, perhaps through patience, through loyalty, through consistency, and each act of investment makes her feel more bound to him, not less. She explains this as love, but beneath it lies Machiavelli's principle: what costs us something, we justify as precious. The idea of use here is not cruelty, but reciprocity, tilted towards strength. He uses her attention, her effort, her willingness to adapt, as signals of loyalty. She uses his leadership, his frame, his certainty, as signals of security. Both are using, but only one of them holds the higher ground. Machiavelli's realism forces us to admit what romantic stories conceal. No relationship exists without exchange, and the one who positions himself as the prize dictates the value of the exchange. This is why she does not love the man who serves endlessly, because he has removed all cost from her. She loves the man who demands investment, because in serving him, in chasing him, in adjusting to his standards, she convinces herself that her sacrifice is proof of real attachment. That is the psychology of value. And Machiavelli would tell you that to ignore it is to surrender power before the game has even begun. Machiavelli once asked the question that has haunted rulers for centuries. Is it better to be loved or feared? His answer was brutal but clear. If you cannot be both, it is safer to be feared. Now place that principle into the hidden theater of seduction, and the meaning becomes undeniable. A man who is only loved, who inspires no consequence if he is betrayed, is quickly taken for granted. A man who is respected, even feared, in the sense that his absence carries weight, becomes the center of her attention. This is not fear of violence or cruelty. It is fear of loss, fear of disappointing a man whose standards she values, fear of knowing that he will not hesitate to walk away. Most men believe that endless affection secures loyalty, but Machiavelli observed that people betray those who rely only on goodwill. Why? Because goodwill is fleeting, but the knowledge of consequence lingers. The man who uses her in this context is the man who never allows affection to stand without respect. He does not beg for her time or cling to her approval. His presence is conditional on her behavior, and she knows it. That knowledge creates tension, and tension is the raw material of desire. Picture it. One man says, "I'll always be here no matter what." The other says, without words but through his posture, "I choose to be here now, but I can choose differently tomorrow." The first inspires comfort but also boredom. The second inspires a low, constant hum of alertness. She sharpens herself around him. She guards her behavior. She pays attention. Machiavelli would say this is the essence of power, to create a field in which others regulate themselves in your presence, not because you demand it loudly, but because they sense the consequence of neglect. This is where fear, respect, and desire intersect. She does not fantasize about the man who hands her devotion without condition, because there is nothing at stake. She fantasizes about the man whose love is precious, whose respect must be maintained, whose absence would wound her pride. In this way, her desire grows not from what he gives freely, but from what she risks losing if she fails to meet his standard. Machiavelli taught rulers to build power not on the shaky ground of affection, but on the solid foundation of authority. In seduction, the same law applies. Attraction that rests only on sweet words and approval fades quickly, but attraction that rests on respect, fear of loss, and the magnetic pull of a man who cannot be controlled becomes obsession. Every theory becomes clearer when it is lived through example, and Machiavelli himself often illustrated his laws with stories of princes who rose or fell by their choices. So imagine two men who enter the same woman's life. The first man is eager to please. He sends her constant messages. He adjusts his schedule to fit hers. He buys her gifts before she has earned them, and he offers reassurance the moment she shows doubt. To him, this is love. To her, it is convenience. His devotion feels more like gravity pulling downward than energy pulling forward, and soon she treats his loyalty as a background noise she no longer notices. The second man is different. He does not run to meet her every time she calls. He does not explain himself when he is busy. He shows interest, yes, but interest that is measured and conditional, as if his time has weight and his attention is not endless. She feels the distance as both irritation and fascination. She criticizes him to her friends. She calls him arrogant. She says he plays games, and yet she cannot stop returning to him, cannot stop checking if he has replied, cannot stop wondering what he thinks of her. He becomes the silent center of her thoughts because she cannot control him, and what she cannot control she cannot ignore. This is not cruelty. He does not insult her, does not belittle her, does not harm her. He simply refuses to be consumed by her demands. He carries his own mission and allows her the choice to step into it or step aside. And every time she chooses to adjust to his standard, every time she bends toward his frame rather than bending him to hers, she invests a little more of herself into him. Machiavelli would call this mastery, not over her heart as a conquest, but over the frame in which desire takes place. The psychology is simple. People chase what resists them and grow bored with what submits. A woman may insist she wants the man who gives everything, but her emotions prove otherwise. She attaches to the man she cannot fully predict, the man whose respect must be maintained, the man whose presence feels like a reward instead of a guarantee. This is the man she loves, even while claiming to hate his indifference. Machiavelli understood that loyalty is never born of gifts but of necessity. In Seduction, necessity translates into emotional weight. She needs his approval more than he needs hers, and that imbalance locks her attention in place. The man she cannot control becomes, in her eyes, the only man worth pursuing. Every law Machiavelli gave to princes was harsh, but it was harsh only because it was true. And the same applies to seduction. The fantasy of unconditional love, the dream of being chosen simply for effort and devotion, has destroyed more men than any rival. He taught that rulers must never rely on affection alone, because affection fades with changing moods, but respect endures when power is clear. For the man in pursuit of desire, the principle is the same. Do not build on promises, build on presence, consequence and standards that cannot be negotiated away. To use her is not to exploit her, but to resist being consumed by her approval. It is to place your purpose above her moods, to demand investment rather than drowning her in gifts, to let her feel the cost of winning you instead of the emptiness of being handed you for free. Machiavelli would remind every man that people love more deeply the things they cannot control. And women are no different. Her passion grows where there is respect, her loyalty grows where there is consequence, and her desire grows where she must adjust to him rather than him adjusting to her. The weak man believes this is cruelty. He tells himself that love must be service, that devotion must be endless, that sacrifice will secure her heart. He does not see that by refusing to demand anything, he destroys the very tension that could have bound her to him. She may praise him for being nice, but her mind drifts elsewhere, toward the man who unsettles her, the man who makes her sharpen herself, the man who never begged for her love because his standards already commanded it. This is the law of seduction according to Machiavelli. The man who pleads loses, the man who performs is forgotten, but the man who refuses to be used, and instead allows her to serve something greater than herself, becomes the man she cannot release. Desire does not follow the path of safety, it follows the path of power, and in the hidden chambers of her heart, she loves not the man who gave her everything, but the man who forced her to prove she was worthy to have anything at all.